Hey guys, so today we're going to take a look at two high-end in-ear monitors, or IEMs. Yeah, these ones are actually by a friend here, and he lent me these IEMs to check out. So I'm going to give you guys my reviews and impressions in this video here. First one is the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus. So the Sultan, I think, originally came out as Noble's flagship IEM back in 2020, I believe, and originally retailed for, I think, $2,900 US, though this version, Damascus version, might be a bit more than that. But yeah, let me give you down the specs here. So yeah, first it has this Damascus pattern, which is this, if you guys know of some history, this is basically a pattern that a lot of the Middle East, I think, they produced a lot of the swords and knives and things like that with this kind of pattern back in the day, in ancient times. So as you get this kind of replication here on this IEM, which is pretty cool. And drivers, so it actually has 7 drivers, one 10mm dynamic, 4 balanced armature, and 2 electrostatic. So at the time, this was Noble's flagship. Now they have the Viking Ragnar and the Kronos, but still, I think the Sultan's still pretty good. And comes with the 12-core OCC pure silver cable that's actually also mixed with, what, palladium, platinum, and gold. Here we go, yeah. It's the Pentagon connector here. Yep. And should be pretty good. Yeah, so 12-core pure silver cable that it comes with right here. Cable here. Yeah. So anyways, I'm going to check this one out and give you guys my impressions, because it is a pretty high-end in-ear monitor. And yeah, I'm going to give you guys my listening impressions of this one. And I have listened to the Noble Khan and the Kublai Khan before, so also comparing to that, and the Viking Ragnar as well. Also, I'm not sure which one came out first, the Sultan Damascus version or the Viking Ragnar, but the Damascus version, if it came out first, yeah, it looks very, very similar to the Viking Ragnar. In fact, when I first saw this from my friend, I thought, is that the Viking Ragnar, right? It looks so similar in terms of the appearance, because the Viking Ragnar also kind of has this Damascus look or pattern on it, right? But yeah, I just find that kind of interesting, right? If they came out with the Sultan Damascus version first, then it may have inspired the appearance of their Viking Ragnar. And the other one I want to listen to is the, this is the Aroma Audio Jewel. Yes, this is the flagship. Actually, it used to be the former one. Now they have the Core coming out, but let's just say this one has been out for a while. I think 2022 or 2023. This was Aroma Audio's flagship, and they're a Hong Kong company that makes the IEMs. And this one is a 13 driver unit with 6 electrostatic, 6 balanced armature, 1 9.2mm dynamic. So this one should be pretty interesting here, but you guys can see the appearance of the Aroma Jewel. In contrast to the Noble Sultan Damascus, this one has more of a, well, it's got like a nice sparkly blue finish to it. Definitely very colorful. Yep. And I think this is some aftermarket cable that come with it. Originally, this IEM retails for $5,100 US. That's definitely pretty high end, and well, that's out of reach from my pockets. So I'm definitely interested to check out this one too. So yeah. Anyways, the Aroma Audio Jewel and the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus. I'm gonna check both of these out. You guys see both of them in this video. I'll let you know what I think of them and compare it to some of the other IEMs I've listened to. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Okay guys, so I listened to both of these IEMs for a bit, and yeah, I'm ready to give my impressions now. So the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus, which by the way retails for $3,500 US, that's a good $600 premium over the original Sultan. So I haven't really tried the original Sultans, by the way. So this is just going to be my impressions on the Damascus version here. Yeah, overall, this is a pretty well-balanced IEM, I would say. It's not especially bass heavy or not especially treble forward either, and not especially mid forward either. It's just actually pretty balanced across the board, and I would say this is actually a nice all-arounder IEM. So it's good for like almost every type of music. The soundstage is quite wide, I would say. If I were to compare it, yeah, the soundstage is maybe a little bit wider than the Kublai Khan's. It's got a little bit more bass, and not quite as treble hot. In other words, I think it's actually just a better balanced Kublai Khan to me. So yeah, I actually like these better. Compared to the Viking Ragnars, I actually think this is better balanced as well. The thing about the Viking Ragnars is I think those are just almost like an upgraded Kublai Khan, where it's like, it's got the same lean bass as the Kublai Khans, and it's got the hot treble of the Kublai Khans, and it just got more layering and wider soundstage and more detail and resolution. But because of that tuning, not everyone might like it. But the Sultans, I think these ones, most people will like it actually, because it's fairly well balanced in terms of tuning. It just, if you're looking for more bass or more treble or like kind of more V-shaped or W-shaped IEM, this is not going to do it for you. I think if you were to go like a little bit more bass, a little bit more treble, the Cool Satins that I reviewed a few months ago will have a little bit more of that. If you go up even further, the Noble Nostalgia Tesseracts that I also reviewed, those have more bass and maybe not more treble, but more bass. And then the Multiverse Mentor that I also reviewed, yeah, those definitely have more bass as well. So if you're looking for, yeah, more like a V-shaped or W-shaped, these will not have that. But I would say overall, these are very well balanced, well tuned IEMs. So far, out of the Noble IEMs I've listened to, I haven't listened to the Chronos yet. I haven't listened to the Chronicle, the Shogun, some of the other Ronin, or some of the other ones. Out of the ones I've listened to, the Kublai Khan and Viking Ragnar, these are my favorite in terms of tuning because they're so well balanced. Yeah, it just has, you know, like I think a lot of those Noble IEMs I talked about, the bass is like fairly lean, but this one is not so lean. It's just got a little bit more, which is good. It's not like a lot of it, but it's still got a little bit more. That's good. And then the treble is not like super hot or anything, so I find that more enjoyable as well. So overall, and the soundstage is great. So, you know, overall, I really like the Sultans. You know, I like it actually even better than the Viking Ragnars, because the Viking Ragnars, as I said, the bass is a little bit too lean for me. The treble's a little bit too hot. Even though technicalities, it's better, right? It has a even better soundstage and layering, resolution. But if you're just looking for tuning, the Sultan Damascus is better, actually. So actually, tuning-wise, this is my favorite Noble IEM so far. Yeah, also the Sultan Damascus, just to go over the technicalities again, very good detail, resolution, texture. I think compared to the Kublai Khans that I reviewed before, and those ones, I think it's actually comparable. I think the Sultans have slightly wider soundstage even than the Kublai Khans, which already had good soundstage. Texture and resolution detail, I think, are actually kind of similar between the two. I mean, kind of makes sense because the Sultan was positioned just slightly higher than the Kublai Khans. So not a huge jump in resolution or detail or texture compared to the Kublai Khans, but those are already pretty good anyways at that. It's just the soundstage is slightly wider on the Sultans. And yeah, it's better balanced with the tuning. Those are the main upgrades you would get if you go from the Kublai Khans to the Sultan Damascus. The Kublai Khans, not as well tuned in my opinion. It's got the hot treble and the lean bass. And if you go to the Sultans, resolution, detail, texture, about the same, but soundstage is a little bit more expanded, just by a touch, I would say. The main upgrade you would get, in my opinion, is the better tuning with the Sultans. You get yeah, more slightly lifted bass, which is just right. I would say it's not like bass heavy or anything like that, but I felt like the Kublai Khans were just too bass light, and the Sultans elevate a bit of that, and it tames down some of the hot treble of the Kublai Khans, so it's just a better balanced IEM in general. So yeah, that's my verdict on the Noble Sultan Damascus. Overall, yeah, out of all the Noble audio IEMs I've tried, it's probably got the best tuning out of all of them, and still very good technicalities too. So let's move on to the Aroma Jewel, which retails for 5,100 US. I think this might be the most expensive IEM that I ever showed on my YouTube channel so far. The Multiverse Mentor is 4,500, I think. But yeah, all right, the Aroma Jewel. Okay, what do I think about this one? Overall, I think technicalities are very good, but not. I think the resolution is quite good, especially if you're talking about the mids, because this is a very, I think, mid-centric, vocal-centric IEM, because it's actually, people like to call the Jewel a neutral IEM. And in my opinion, yeah, you could call it that. It's actually very bass light and treble light. You might notice that, yeah, there is bass presence and treble presence, but not like a whole lot of it. That might be why Aroma Audio makes a Feiwan, The Fey one is actually quite different in terms of tuning and has a lot more of the bass and treble. So that's why I think some people might prefer the Fey one with the Jewel. They're actually quite different in terms of tuning. Fey one's a bit cheaper, but yeah, they're quite different. The Jewel is definitely, I think, more mid-centric and vocal focused. And soundstage is okay. It's wide, but not quite as wide as the Sultan Damascus, in my opinion. I think the Sultan Damascus actually has a wider soundstage, but it's still good. You know, you still got decent depth to it and verticality, but in terms of width, I think not quite as much as the Sultan Damascus or the Multiverse Mentor, in my opinion. But what the Jewel does best is the vocals and the mids, I think. In terms of that, it's got such a natural, textured, organic mid-range. And when I listen to tracks, that vocal tracks and pop tracks, I think, is what it's good at. I can see that it's very, very intimate. And that's in a good way, you know, in the best way possible, where it feels like the singer is right beside you. It's like singing right in front of you, and you can hear the texture of their voice and everything. That's the best way I can describe it. You might be asking, what do you mean by natural, organic mids, right? I mean, just feel the singer singing right beside you, as if they're right in front of you, singing right in front of you, right? Very intimate, and you can feel the texture in their voice. And that's something that, out of all the IEMs I've tried, I think very, very few can match up to that. Like, I can say I have vocal-centric, mid-centric IEMs. I have the Bravo EM AT2Cs, right? Those are mid-centric and vocal-centric too. But those are a little bit more, you don't feel like the singer's right beside you, like they're kind of a little bit away from the stage. So you kind of hear like some echo, right? Because they're a little bit farther away from you. Not with the Jewel. Jewel, you feel like they're pretty intimate, right up close to you. It also doesn't feel quite as natural and organic as the Jewel either. Even though those are great IEMs too, and they're mid-centric, the Bravos, but on a different, they're just different than the Jewels. I think the only other IEM I can sure that has this maybe naturalness to it is the Shure KSC 1200s, but also in a different way too. Those are of course electrostatics, so they have a little bit of a different texture to them. But yeah, overall, I think out of all the IEMs I've tried, I haven't tried the Aureolus Trelli, which I heard is quite good for vocals and mids as well, but out of all the IEMs I've tried, I think the Jewel has probably the most organic, natural sounding vocal texture to it. So maybe not an all-arounder, I would say. Like, I wouldn't recommend these for electronic tracks or like energetic music per se, because it doesn't really have too much bass or treble to it. This is like almost like the opposite of what people think when they think of the V-shaped one, right? Because if you're looking for a lot of energy, yeah, these are not the ones. But if you're listening to a lot of pop music, a lot of music with a lot of vocal intimacy, yeah, maybe some jazz singers or something like that, you will really like this IEM. I think definitely out of all the IEMs I've tried, this one the best when it comes to vocal texture. Very, very natural and organic sounding mid-range. And yeah, overall, I think that's what the Aroma Jewel is the best at. Some of the best mid-detail that I've heard in an IEM. And that's what I mean by, yeah, it's very vocal-centric, mid-centric, but you don't hear too much of the bass or treble. However, you will hear this lush, organic, natural sounding mid-range that's also, you know, a little bit forward and detailed. That's the best way I can describe it, just very natural, organic sounding in terms of the vocals and mid-range. And the Sultan Damascus is very well balanced sounding for Noble IEM. Overall, I like them both, and I think that they complement each other very well, depending on the type of music that you listen to. And yeah, I mean, I would say if you add a Multiverse Mentor to this collection, it would be complete, right? Because neither of these are like so energetic, I would say, but the Multiverse Mentor does have that. So I would sure add a Multiverse Mentor, and then this collection would be complete. But it's already a really good collection, you know. Aroma Jewel for vocal tracks, and then the Sultan Damascus, very well balanced, right? You know, it's almost an all-arounder, pretty much. So yeah, that's it. That's my opinion of these two, Sultan Damascus and Aroma Jewel, two very top-of-the-line IEMs. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. These are my impressions. I use the Aston Kern SP3000M as my source, by the way, for testing these. So yeah, I like both of these IEMs, although I'll admit that, yeah, neither of them are really for the energetic type of tracks. Both of these are more for milder type of music, I would say. So you're not going to get a lot of bass or actually treble from either of them. Like The Sultans have a little bit more of that, but they're still well balanced. But it's not going to be like an IEM for like a really energetic or V-shaped type of tuning, which is not. The Jewel, some have considered the Jewel to be boring sounding. Actually, a lot of people call it neutral. Some have even called it boring because it really doesn't have too much treble or bass. It's really like mid-focused, really for vocals, like I said. Yeah, so if you are really listening to a lot of pop tracks or maybe some jazz singers or some ballads, things like that, then the Jewel is really one of the best IEMs for that, to bring out those kind of vocals, especially with that organic, natural sounding texture. And although it's intimate sounding, it's still got a pretty decently wide soundstage in my opinion. But yeah, I wouldn't call it boring. It really just depends on what type of music you're listening to. I guess I can understand if people are referring that because it doesn't have a lot of bass or treble, so it's not really energetic. So yeah, it's extremely bass light and treble light, I would say. It's more of a just all about the mids, I would say. So yeah, I guess that's why some people call it boring sounding, quote unquote, because yeah, it's really not for energetic tracks at all. The Aroma Jewel is basically a specialty IEM for people who listen to a lot of vocal tracks and yeah, just pop tracks, ballad tracks, things like that. It really shines in that context. But yeah, for those of you guys who think that the Jewel is a little bit too neutral or quote unquote boring sounding, I mean, that's why Aroma Audio makes the Feiwan, as I mentioned. The Feiwan is a more energetic sounding IEM. It's more V-shaped, and yeah, it provides a nice contrast to the Jewel, I would say. The Jewel is like slightly more expensive, not by much. It's like maybe $1,000 more expensive than the Feiwan. The Feiwan's still a $4,000 IEM, so I mean, they're both expensive IEMs, but tuned very differently. And I can see why, because yeah, the Feiwan, it's a more dynamic, fun sounding, some would say, right? A more fun sounding IEM compared to the Jewel. And I'm not saying I agree with people saying the Jewel is boring, but I think it's just different tuning preferences. Yes, the Feiwan does sound more fun, quote unquote, because it's more V-shaped and therefore more dynamic, energetic sounding. That doesn't mean that the Jewel is not as great, because the Jewel is great for its own purposes. If you're looking for a more mid-centric, vocal-centric IEM, then that's what the Jewel is. It's one of the best at that. And the Noble Sultan is a little bit better balanced out of these two. Yeah, I would say the Noble Sultan is more of an all-arounder, and the Aroma Jewel is more of a specialty IEM. But both are good, just in their own ways. Both have good technicalities, I would say. Yeah, it really just depends what you're listening to. But the next IEM I will compare it to is my Nostalgia Audio Tesseract, which I actually mentioned in my other video that actually I was testing this against the Quill Satin and the IEM Multiverse Mentor about which one to keep, and I ended up keeping the Tesseract because to me it just had a little bit more emotional impact when I heard it. Like the Quill Satin, it's a really nice IEM, technically very, very good, hits above its price range, to be honest. But didn't really do it for me. I think treble was a little bit too harsh at times, and yeah, I just feel like it lacked something, right? And same thing, IEM Multiverse Mentor, very technically great IEM, better soundstage than the Satin actually, and it's got a really good bass, and it's really a nice IEM for for people who listen to pop and EDM and a lot of those more energetic tracks. I think the IEM Multiverse Mentor is great for that, but again, it didn't give me the emotional impact the Nostalgia Audio Tesseract did. The Tesseract gave me this special emotional impact, probably because it has the airiest sounding mids out of all of them. So yeah, even though technicalities, I think the Multiverse Mentor is better than the Tesseract. Even the Satin, I think in some areas are better than the Tesseract, especially on the sub bass. But the Tesseract has this nice, wide, open, airy feeling soundstage, and when I hear vocals and mids on this, it really just kind of opens up and gives me more of an emotional impact. And I feel that same way about Aroma Jewel, to be honest. So if you want to compare Tesseract to the two IEMs I just talked about, yeah, so compared to the Aroma Jewel, I would say that Aroma Jewel has a nice emotional impact because the mids just sound so lush and organic and natural, right? And Tesseract kind of has some of that, although not to the same degree as Jewel. Jewel has yeah, better resolution and texture than Tesseract does on the mids, although the soundstage on the Tesseract is still really good. Tesseract has more bass and also has a bit more treble as well, so if you're listening to more energetic tracks, I'm not saying that Tesseract is the best for that. I think Multiverse Mentor is even better, and there's a lot of IEMs that are better for that, like more V-shaped IEMs like the Andromeda, for example. But I think that the Tesseract is definitely, it will have more bass and treble impact compared to the Jewel, for sure. So it's not as boring sounding as the Jewel, quote unquote. It does have pretty decent mids, although not to the same level as Jewel does. So yeah, if you want to compare the Tesseract to the Jewel has better mids, more vocal texture, sounds more lush, natural, and organic. Soundstage, I still think the Tesseract is a little bit wider in soundstage compared to Jewel, and it has more bass and treble presence. So yeah, again, depending on what you're listening to, right? Tesseract will, I think, work for more types of music than the Jewel will. The Jewel, like I said, is a very specialty IEM just for vocal tracks and stuff, like pop and yeah, some jazz and ballads and stuff like that. That's where the Jewel shines. I think the Tesseract will be okay at most genres. It won't be the best, but it'll just be okay at most genres. Definitely more of an all-arounder compared to the Jewel. Now, compared to the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus, I think that the Sultan Damascus is definitely more leaner sounding, especially when it comes to the bass. It's more lean in the bass compared to Tesseract's. Treble, I think the Sultan might have better defined treble, to be honest. I don't think the Tesseract's treble's all that great. I think the Sultan Damascus actually might have better defined treble. Mids wise, I think, yeah, that's an interesting one. I think that one, I like the Sultan's mids as well, but I think I might actually take Tesseract's mids by a hair, just because I like that airy feeling soundstage, especially when it comes to the mids. Soundstage wise is actually interesting because I do think the Sultan Damascus has the width, the soundstage width is there, but when it comes to vocals, I still think the Tesseract has those airy mids that the Sultan doesn't have, even though the Sultan has a pretty wide soundstage as well. I think technicality-wise, they're both fairly comparable. So Sultan Damascus versus Tesseract, yeah, technicality-wise, both comparable, I would say. Neither of them compared to the Jewel in terms of the actual technicalities on the mids. I think the Jewel just has the better mids compared to both Tesseract and the Sultan Damascus. But yeah, Damascus versus Sultan Damascus versus the Tesseract, I think roughly the same level. Really just depends on what you're listening to. The Tesseract will have more bass presence than the Sultan Damascus, and treble. I think Sultan Damascus actually has better treble. Mids, it really depends on what type of songs you're listening to. I personally prefer the Tesseract, but they're roughly almost the same level. I would say the Sultan Damascus is more. Definitely, it's a little bit flatter tuned, a little bit more neutral tuned compared to the Tesseracts. The Tesseracts are not neutral. And yeah, overall, I think if you're listening, if you want to have a more reference balanced type of sound, I still think the Sultan Damascus is the best for that. The Tesseracts are not that neutral, and yeah, it's more of like a W-shaped sound signature, I would say, leaning towards that. Not too W-shaped, but it leans towards a W-shaped sound signature. Whereas the Noble Sultan Damascus is definitely more of a slightly flatter, balanced sounding IEM. And then the Jewel is basically just a mid-forward type of IEM. It's pretty lean in all other areas except for the mids. That's where it gets, I wouldn't say pushed up, but it definitely shows the mids more because everywhere else is very, like the bass and the treble are pretty lean and flat on the Jewel. So it's, not something that you hear too much on. Just that's why the mids are so revealing on the Jewel, I think, is because, that's where it emphasizes. You don't really hear too much of the other frequencies, to be honest. But out of these three, it really depends what you listen to. Again, vocal tracks, I think the Aroma Audio Jewel is one of the best IEMs on the market for just listening to vocal tracks. I think it's just that's the thing. That it's a specialty IEM. It just does vocals the best. And I know Aureolus Trelli is out there as well. I haven't compared it to that, and I haven't heard it. That's another IEM that some say is really good for vocals. But I will say, out of all the IEMs I've heard, the Aroma Jewel is probably the best IEM I've heard for vocals, with the Bravo EMT2C coming probably after that. And then the Tesseract, it's it's okay at most genres, I would say. Not the best. Decent amount of bass and treble, mid presence, very good soundstage, really wide, open, and airy. So yeah, I kept this one just because I felt like I got a little bit more emotional impact from this one compared to Cool Satin or Multiverse Mentor, even though I would say that technicalities wise, it isn't quite as up there as those two. But yeah, when it comes to that open, airy soundstage, especially around the mids, I think that the Tesseract is the best there. So decent at most genres. And the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus, I think, yeah, that one is fairly good at all genres. A nice all-arounder. You're not gonna get as much energy or excitement out of it compared to even the Tesseract. I think that's the only thing. If you want more, you know, energetic sounding tracks or an energetic sounding IEM, the Noble Sultan Damascus is not that. So it's a fairly lean, leaning towards neutral, not quite as neutral as say the Khan is, but still on the neutral side. So yeah, if you want to listen to something a little bit more exciting, that's when you probably would, out of these three, you would lean towards the Tesseract, because the Tesseract is the most exciting sounding out of these three. But I mean, there's more exciting sounding IEMs than any of these three, right? None of them are really that V-shaped or W-shaped. Tesseract's the most out of these, but even then, it's not really like too much. So yeah, that's when you might want to go for something like a Visioneers V10, which I had before, or the IEM Multiverse Mentor. Those are a little bit more noticeably W-shaped IEMs. So. Or yeah, the Andromeda, right? That's a pretty V-shaped IEM, or any of the IEM Mests are pretty V-shaped, except for the Jet Black. That one's actually more neutral side. But Mest Mark II, Mark III, those are pretty V-shaped leaning, or even U-shaped, like the TA Audio Monarchs. Any of those would actually be a little bit better for energetic sounding tracks. But yeah, that's basically my conclusion out of these three. If you guys are looking for, yeah, nice, decent IEM that plays well with most genres and also sounds a little bit energetic, then the Tesseract is good for that, with a wide, airy soundstage, especially around the mids. Then the Noble Sultan Damascus is just a nice, balanced, leaning neutral type of IEM that I think is just, yeah, it's just really good for most types of music that, unless you want to have a lot of, you know, energy and bass, unless you want that, I think otherwise it's fairly good for most music, because it's like reference level almost. And then the Aroma Jewel, you know, that's just a nice vocal centric IEM. So out of those three, yeah, all have their own places, I would say, in the IEM market. Really depends on what type of music you're listening to and what you prefer. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you guys prefer in the comment section below, what you guys think of my impressions. But yeah, that's it. Talked about the Noble Damascus, Aroma Jewel, and then the Tesseracts. Yeah. I think one of the big issues with all of these higher end IEMs, of course, is the price, and it's with the Aroma Jewel at $5,100. Yeah, that's a pretty hard recommendation at the full price, to be honest. Even if it has probably the best natural sounding vocals and mids I've ever heard, it's still, that's really, really expensive. So I wouldn't recommend anyone buy actually any of these IEMs at the retail price, because it's just really, really overpriced. So I recommend, if you guys can find any of these IEMs used, then they're all good. I think all these IEMs I'm talking about, whether it be the Tesseract, the Multiverse Mentor, the Cool Satin, or the Noble Audio Sultan Damascus, or the Aroma Audio Jewel, they can all be found roughly around the same price range. Like, they can be found for I would say maybe like around $2,000 US to around $2,500 US. You can find all of these IEMs, because I think, in my opinion, they're kind of all the same tier. I know they're all different prices MSRP, but for me, they all play around the same level, to be honest. Like, it's just, they have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Like, Multiverse Mentor, for example, great technicalities, good sounds, very good soundstage and imaging, very good bass and everything, really nice for energetic tracks, but is not necessarily the best for mids, you know. I find the mids a little bit lacking on the Multiverse Mentor, actually, and that makes it really not too much of an all-arounder, but it is good for a lot of tracks, and you know, very good for energetic tracks and stuff. The Cool Satin, I feel like, yeah, the upper mid-range is really nice, Treble extension, sub-bass extension is all really nice, but the treble can get a little bit harsh and sibilant sometimes if you push the volume up. It needs a lot of power to drive. So overall, it's also not necessarily the most balanced IEM either. So, you know, a lot of people will like the Satin 2, but again, it's not quite as much of an all-arounder either. I think the Sultan Damascus is probably the best all-arounder out of all these in terms of tuning. But, and it's got very good soundstage as well. It's really, I would say, up there with Multiverse Mentor in terms of soundstage. So yeah, very, very good. Plays nicely with any of these 4K, even 5K level IEMs, in fact, in terms of technicalities. But, you know, along with that balanced tuning, some people might think that the bass is a little bit too lean still on the Sultans or the treble. If they're used to the other Noble Audio Sultans, they might be saying, why is the treble, you know, not quite as hot as the other Noble Audios? And the mids are okay. I'm not saying they're definitely not as good as the Jewels, right? All these IEMs have their strengths and weaknesses, right? The Tesseract, the bass is not the best on those. I think the Multiverse Mentor is way better bass than the Tesseracts. The bass is okay on them, you know, but could be better. Same thing, mids and treble, honestly, not the best in their class either, but it's got really nice airy soundstage. So yeah, those are the strengths and weaknesses of the Tesseract, and that's retails for $3,700 US dollars. Aroma Jewel, like I said, very nice, airy, organic, lush sounding mid-range, really great for vocals, but it's not an all-rounder. It doesn't do energetic tracks very well, doesn't have the bass or the treble for it, you know? It's really just all mids. So even though all these IEMs retail for different price points, yeah, I would say they all play around the same category and tier, just they have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Even though their MSRPs are all different. But that's why you can find them all for roughly around the same price secondhand. In fact, interestingly, I think the Aroma Feiwan actually tends to go for higher secondhand than the Jewel, even though the Jewel retailed for higher. Might be because the Feiwan has a sound signature that sounds more energetic and fun and lively, so maybe more people prefer that. That's why it has a higher secondhand retail price, or a higher retail price in the secondary market. Who knows? I think they're both just good at different things, but yeah, I just noticed that the Feiwan usually gets higher prices relative to its MSRP when it gets resold, compared to the Jewel, which seems to have a big drop from its MSRP value. Probably none of these IEMs are worth the MSRP, but yeah, the Jewel at $5,000 is definitely going to be a tough sell, especially because it's not an all-arounder. It's really just for vocal tracks and stuff. But yeah, again, all these IEMs good at different things, and I would just recommend finding any of them in the secondary market, the secondhand market. Do not buy any of these MSRP, unless you have the money, of course. I'm not saying you shouldn't spend it, but yeah, just saying, like, these are all really expensive IEMs. They're all above 3K, right? So that's pretty expensive. And if you compare to full-size headphones, they're actually, you know, more expensive than like 90% of full-size headphones. So you think about the IEM market. The IEM market is actually pushed a lot higher than full-size headphone market, I think, or inflated, if you want to call it that. And yeah, I think being in this hobby, this IEM hobby, a lot of people tend to churn these IEMs a lot and just start collecting them or churning them. And I think for a lot of people in this hobby, trying all these IEMs is more about just trying different flavors, you know? It's like trying different flavors of candy or something. Yeah, seriously, like, it gets addictive. A lot of people just end up spending a lot of money just to try all these different IEMs. And yeah, I mean, I know people, like friends who are in this hobby, like, they literally found the IEM they really like, and they still like sold it just to try another one. Like, it's not even about, like, if the end game is to find the IEM that you're really satisfied with and you like, I think that's great. But it seems like a lot of people in this hobby are just about, like, trying stuff. Like, even if they have an IEM they really like, they still like churn it and they try other IEMs just to try stuff. So anyways, for me, I just want to find the one IEM, or actually just a nice small collection that I'm satisfied with. Yeah, I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily addicted to trying all these IEMs like other people are, but yeah, it's fun. I get it, you know? A lot of really expensive stuff here, and yeah, people just want to try the latest and greatest sometimes, and yeah, hype chasing. In my opinion, after trying my Shure KSC 1200/1500s and the Bravo EAM-T2Cs, those were the older IEMs from like 10 years ago, yeah, I'm like, you know, I think older flagship might be better value, right? instead of hype chasing the latest. This is my opinion. You know, you're paying a lot to get the latest IEMs, and they might not even be what you like. And yeah, I think that in the latest IEM prices are honestly, the latest flagship prices are just pushing higher and higher. Look at the Aroma Core, it's $7,500. That's insane, right? All the new UM IEMs as well. They're really pushing up the prices there, right? I've seen the Fable Sound and Mason, like Asahi, like those are just crazy pricing, like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, right? The Trilly was already kind of pushing that a few years ago. Mr. Craft Hex, that's like a $9,000 IEM, nuts, right? See all these crazy new IEMs coming out with the extremely expensive prices. Campur 752B, that's another one, over $5,000, $6,000 or something. Yeah, it's just a lot. Alpha Omega Fulgrim, you know, Noble Chronos, although relatively speaking is not as high as some of these other ones, but still $4,500, you know, definitely not pocket change. I know people are going to just keep trying these newer expensive IEMs, but for me, I like to try them, you know. I'm not going to blind buy something that expensive, and yeah, for me, like, I'm actually quite satisfied with my Shure KST 1200 1500s right now, and I think those are actually still really, really good. It competes with some of the best if you tune it right and EQ it right and drive it with a nice DAC and amplifier, and with a built-in amplifier. So yeah, Subtonic Storm is another one, right? Like that one, I think you had to get on like some wait list or something to even try to buy it. And yeah, it's like $6,000 at least. Once you add in the high-end cables and everything, you're like pushing, what, 8, 9, 10K? Yeah, and cables are a whole other ballpark, you know. That's a whole different discussion, and that's even more overpriced than IEMs are. You have stuff like the Beat Audio Valhalla and like $8,000 cables, the Breeze audio stuff. It gets just insane, and they're more expensive than a lot of flagship IEMs, which is just crazy, right? Once you get into the high-end IEM cables and stuff. So that's a whole other discussion. But yeah, like this IEM hobby is just it's really crazy. It's really meant for people who are like I don't want to say gambling, but just people who are really have a lot of money to spare, and yeah, they want to just try out all these things. It's basically like people who have a lot of money, and it's like a very, very high-end candy shop, essentially. I think of that as that's what the IEM hobby is to me, right? No, like the higher end stuff, right? The smaller, like the cheaper Chi-Fi stuff, you know, at the lower end, the KZs, the 7 hertz, the Kiwi ears, that stuff, right? Dunu, Moondrop, FiO, yeah. That stuff's, you know, all good too. People can try out the different things. I'm talking about like the higher end IEMs are mostly for people who just have big pockets. And it's really just a really, really high-end candy store or something. They go in and then they try all these IEMs, and that's what CanJam is essentially. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the hobby anyways. And this is just my personal opinion as an audiophile. After being in this hobby for the past couple of years, it's all diminishing returns, right? Obviously, like once you go into the higher and higher end, you're paying a lot more money just for like very, very marginal gains, essentially. That's just how it is. Like going from $100 to $200 IEM or $200 IEM to $500 IEM or headphones is going to be bigger than the difference between, say, like $1,000 to like $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000. I'm serious. Like you just get like a much bigger jump right at the beginning when you start getting to this hobby, and that's how I think how people get into it. Is like they're upgrading from their like AirPods or EarPods or whatever. Those are just whatever basic earphones that you were listening to. People upgrading from that, and they go into $100, $200, $500 IEMs, even $1,000 IEMs, and then they get really, really, you know, surprised by the sound quality. And I was like that too, right? When I first went with my TO Audio Monarch Mark IIs, I thought those were the best things I ever listened to, and then you just go up from there, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Of course, the jump in quality is not going to be as much, but yeah, people always are like wanting to chase the best quality sound, right? You're paying for those marginal differences later on. I tried the Luxury and Precision E7 digital audio player recently. That's a $4,000 digital audio player. It's maybe like 15-20% better than like the $1,000 what K&N7 that you can get right now. Like, yeah, it's not really that much better. To be honest, it's like you're paying like what 4 or 5 times the price. And actually, I should be fair. You know, K&N7 didn't originally retail for $1,000, but let's just compare to say my Hobby RS6, which did originally retail for that price, right? Is it that much better? Maybe 30%. I would say, like sound quality wise, but you're paying like 5 times the price. So you attain like, or 4 times the price, I should say, 400% more. You're paying 4 times the price, but you're getting like a 30% increase in sound quality maybe. So yeah, it's really about those marginal differences. And I guess like people are willing to pay for that. That's why they pay for these higher end IM cables as well. Like, you're paying a lot more money, thousands and thousands of dollars more for essentially when you're buying cables, it's just to tune the sound a little bit more. Yeah, it can maybe affect the soundstage too. Affecting the soundstage and like tuning it, adding more bass if you're getting copper cable, or adding more treble if you're getting silver cable, or some combination of them using like a palladium or something. Like, sure, you can kind of play around with the materials to kind of tune your IM more. You can do the same thing essentially using EQ, but then people don't like it because that's, you know, you want to be purist, just buy a cable to tune it instead. Yeah, it can increase the soundstage width a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, probably DAPs are probably, or DACs affect the sound a little bit more, but cables probably, yeah, a little bit less than DAPs will. Like really amplification, DAC, and then cable, I would say, is the order will affect the sound quality of an IM. Obviously, changing the IM will affect it the most. But yeah, people are paying a lot of money for these marginal differences in costs, and the upgraded cable. I don't think cables necessarily can increase the resolution of an IM if it didn't already have it. I think what a cable could do is just kind of fine tune the sound a bit with, yeah, just adding a little bit more bass, or taking away a little bit more bass, or well, a little more body to the bass, or adding a little bit more to the highs, you know, or making the highs a little bit less harsh, you know. Those are the things that cable can do, kind of fine tune the sound signature a bit. If you have a good IM, then yeah, basically you buy a cable just to fine tune it a little bit more. I wouldn't say it necessarily increases the technicalities a lot though. So don't buy cable just because you think it will make your $1,000 IM sound like a $5,000 one. It doesn't increase the technicalities per se. I would say higher end, even higher end IM cables, I think they're just for fine tuning the sound that you already like on your IM, just fine tuning it more. Yeah, kind of like, you could just use EQ to kind of do the same thing, but in my opinion, yeah, it's yeah, people buy cables because they think, you know, it's a better way of tuning their IMs and stuff, and they're willing to pay a lot of money for that. So yeah, those are my thoughts. You know, like headphones, same thing. Full size headphones don't go as high up as IMs do at this point in time. I don't see as many like $4,000, $5,000 full size headphones. There are, right, the Meze, the higher end Mezes and Audizes, and Hyphen obviously with their Susvaras and stuff. Yeah, sure, those Utopias, you know, those can obviously go thousands of dollars higher, but I'm saying there's just more IEMs in that price range than full-size headphones. And it's almost become common in the IEM space actually to see like a 3K IEM. It's like so common these days. Speakers even more so, right? I haven't talked about that. That's a whole nother ballpark too, but speakers, like that can go into hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? That's a whole other category where you are really paying. The cable stuff for speakers are going to be even more crazy. You know, speaker cables, like check the Nordos stuff, the Cardas stuff, the Wire World, right? That stuff you're paying like tens of thousands of dollars potentially just for cable, which is insane. So speakers are a whole other ballpark. That's really for people who are rich, deep pockets, and yeah, they have the money to like acoustically treat their room and stuff like that. That's insane, right? And you got monoblock amplifiers, you got high-end tube amplifiers, and yeah, that's another whole other ballpark of audiophile. But yeah, I think just being in this hobby, this audiophile hobby, you get used to the higher prices and get used to paying a lot of money for marginal gains, essentially. Yeah, so anyways, now this is my thought. It's really a hobby for for people who have deep pockets and like trying out things and are okay with paying a lot of money for essentially like a few percentage of gains. If they're okay with that, then I mean, if you guys are okay with that, then maybe you'll be okay in this hobby. Because that's what this hobby is about, really. Just about chasing, chasing different flavors of sound and being okay with paying a lot of money for marginal gains, essentially is what it is in the higher end of this hobby. So people just keep chasing the best sound quality, essentially. It's never ending. It's like a never ending bottomless rabbit hole that you'll just keep spending more and more money to chase after something that likely for a lot of people they'll never be satisfied with, because it's just part of this hobby. Right? Perhaps the end is just perhaps the end for me, at least, is like I got married and I have a wife, and yeah, that's really the end of it. Otherwise there'll be no one to stop me, right? So yeah, that might be actually the end. Otherwise it's just never ending, right? Just keep chasing after stuff. Newer and newer toys essentially coming out all the time that people want to try, new flavors of candies essentially, and it'll just never be ending. So yeah, I decided to stop, just not really buying any new ones unless it's like a crazy deal or something. Otherwise, yeah, it has to be like a really good deal for me, and also has to be an IEM or a piece of audio equipment I really like. Otherwise, I'm just gonna try to stop with this churning, this endless amount of buying and selling, losing money every time. Yeah, it's definitely detrimental to my wallet, and also not really healthy either, you know, to be mentally mentally focused on this all the time, thinking about different sound quality all the time, and yeah, looking up different new flavors of IEMs and just doing a lot of browsing all the time, just doing that. Like, I don't think it's really mentally healthy, but it's like an obsession, you know, for a lot of people. So yeah, I think it's better to take a break and just try to find something. Being satisfied, I know it's so difficult to do in this hobby, but yeah, I think it's at the end you have to be, you know, like I think otherwise it's just going to keep draining your wallet, and also I think it's a mental issue too. Yeah, there's people I know that literally, like, they buy an IEM, they sell the exact same IEM, and they rebuy the same IEM like just weeks later. You know, that's like for me that's like a mental health issue. If you're at that point, if you're at the point where you have a collection of, like, you know, 20, 30, 40 headphones or IEMs or something, and then you're buying and reselling the same IEM, like, that's, you know, go seek professional help at that point. You know, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, so I feel that way being in this audiophile hobby, where I feel like it's like an addiction and you can't stop, and you just keep buying and reselling stuff just because you want to try something different. And yeah, unfortunately I think that's what a lot of people in this hobby are kind of stuck in. Yeah, just even if they like the sound of something, they still want to, like, keep buying and reselling because they just want to try something different. It's like an addiction, you know. You keep wanting to try new flavors of candy. Yeah, so it just, yeah, you like hearing, like, different songs being presented in a different way, I guess. So it's almost like, hey, I want to keep playing the same song to test, you know, different headphones and IEMs and speakers and stuff. Well, yeah, I consider that an addiction, basically. It's like you keep wanting to try essentially the same songs and stuff just on different equipment, just because you want to hear and try something different, you know. And that's kind of like an addiction. It's like, it's hard to stop because it's hard to be satisfied, because you're always kind of trying to try something and chase something, right? And you'll never really, even if you find the one that you really like, it's still not enough. It's never enough. So that's an issue with this hobby. Like, I have to keep telling myself and train myself, yes, I have a $3,000 digital audio player, the AK SP3000M, and I also have another $3,000 IEM, the Nostalgia Tesseracts, which are not my only IEMs. I have other ones too, but, you know, that would be enough for the normal person. They'll be like, what the heck, you have $6,000 worth of audio equipment, how can you still not be satisfied with that, right? To the typical person, you know, that may seem crazy, but hey, for the audiophile, that's just like, yeah, it's good for now, but likely they'll just change their rig within like another week or so, right? $6,000 worth of audio equipment just for play music on the go, and still not enough for now. It's like it'll satisfy someone for just a week when it comes to audiophiles. Like for the normal person, it's like, what, $6,000 for a digital music player and like earphones, high-end earphones essentially. But yeah, for audiophiles, we're a different breed, I guess. It's hard to be satisfied even when you have that level of equipment. Yeah, it's a mental health issue. I think we have to recognize that as an audiophile. We have kind of mental health issues here. It's hard to cure the addiction, I know. But yeah, that's it. That's my my review of all these different higher end IEMs, and I'm glad I finally got the opportunity to try the Noble Sultan Damascus and the Aroma Jewel. I've been wanting to try those for a long time. Maybe next up I will try the Trailies and tell you guys what I think. That's like a $6,000 IEM that was been Summit 5 for a while, and maybe I'll get my hands on that one next time. We'll see. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Let me know what you guys think of my thoughts about the Noble Sultan Damascus and Aroma Jewel, if you agree or disagree, or if you're just curious to learn more about them. Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.